Hi everyone, I'm here today to share my review and a tutorial on Arteza's watercolor brush pens. The Arteza art company reached out and asked if I would like to try some of their products, and I have been on a quest to see how I could work some of these art supplies into junk journaling. And so I had requested several different products, and this is one that I was quite excited about, their watercolor brush pens. And they were kind enough to send me this box of 18. I've got them in a pen caddy, and I'd like to show you a little bit about what I've been able to do with them. The first thing I did was make a palette, a swatch cheat sheet for myself. I wanted to see what they looked like when they went on heavy and how they faded as I pulled them away from what I painted in the lighter colors, and it kind of gave me an overview. And I do find myself going back to this each time I want to use them to figure out which ones I want to grab. I did this also on regular cardstock. Now this is something that I found to be the biggest challenge. We don't typically have any kind of watercolor paper in our junk journals, and I had discussed this quite a bit with Wendy Connors Beckett, she's a real artist. And knows all about working with watercolors, and we were discussing ways we might be able to get them into the junk journals. So my quest was to figure out first how to do that using the papers that we already use in our junk journals. So what I did was I went to my tea-dyed index cards, which if you've seen any of my videos, you know I love. And this is what I like to put in the pockets of things as ephemera. And what I have done is I have taken these and watercolored right onto them. And you know what? It holds up pretty well. And I was able to do quite a few things with them. I'll just give you a quick example here. This is just a regular watercolor brush in water, and I'm just going to put a few dabs there. And this is the Arteza brush pen. This is the red. And if I go outside where that wet spot is, it goes on pretty thick and pretty red. As soon as I combine it with that water, it starts to act like a whole different animal, and it spreads and pulls quite well. And I can bring it out to the edges. Now this is quite diluted on the brush pen at this point because I've got it wet, but if I just shake it once or twice and come down here where there's no water, I can get it to thicken up really quickly again. And then once again, if I want to pull it or dilute it, I can just add some water. And after that's on the page, I can even take my brush and dab it here. And as long as it hasn't dried completely, I find I can pull it pretty well and direct it to different areas. So I played with this quite a bit with the reds and blues, and as most of you know, I'm in the middle of doing a series of journals with the Les Mis theme, and piles for ephemera cards. I have wanted the red, white, and blue for the French flag, and just experimented with different ways to put it on the page. I've gotten these wet first. Take one right here. Gotten them wet first and then applied some of the watercolor to it. And I've done it this way, trying to keep more of the color on the edge here, so that if I wanted to stitch or put anything else on it, the color would show up nicely on the edge. And then on others, I've actually taken the brush pen. I've also noticed the water pulls a little bit of the tea stain here and there, so it does actually get a little bit darker at times. This is only going on light because I've been working with this pen in the water, but it will thicken up again. So here I've applied it with no water, and then after the fact I can put on water and pull it this way. Although sometimes when you put it on dry without applying the water to the page first, it kind of sets and you can't pull it quite as well. It's just a great effect. So let me move this out of the way and I'll show you what I did next. So once I had watercolored a number of the tea-dyed index cards and I had made sure that I had the color pulled to the edges well, I actually went into the Les Mis books. I have several that I'm shredding for different ephemera and pieces inside the journals. And I've ripped portions of the page out that will fit on the index card. So with the Mod Podge, I just went over the back of this page. Sorry about the shadows. I've got all kinds of artificial lights. I'm trying not to stand in the way of them to cast any shadows for you guys to see. Soon as I turn on the video, the sun goes away routinely. One of the many ways I control weather. So with the Mod Podge, it'll go right over the painted tea-dyed card. And once that dries out, it actually dries quite flat. So after that's dry, what I did was I took it and then on some of them I Mod Podged over the top, and it did not smear or re-pull the watercolors underneath. It just sealed it in nicely. And then I was able to go, you can see the sheen on that, I was able to go and stitch on a pull so that I can just put that in a pocket as a piece of ephemera. And I did this with a number of them. With this one, I had just lightly pulled some watercolors on and then stitched one of the pictures. Actually, the Mod Podge did smear the vintage distress ink just a bit, but not bad. Not enough so that I wouldn't want to use it. It looks quite old that way. So I have a lot of these waiting to dry. So that is the basis of what I did to get these index cards colored this way. To give you an idea of how these wonderful watercolor brush pens operate before I got them wet, and the way that you'll find them once you take the top off, I've grabbed the Wisteria Purple, and what is this? This is Eggplant. So I've grabbed these two purples, and I just thought I would give you a good example here of how they go on the page. If you kind of use the side of it, you can get a nice wide bit of it, but they get pretty specific too. I mean, you can get quite a thin line on there. So there's several ways you can get this onto the page. You can, of course, use it like this to color things in, and if you take the brush pretty soon after, you can pull it a little bit, but it really wants to set quickly if it goes onto a dry page. Here, let me just smear over this. Again, this is not on watercolor paper. Most of us making junk journals don't have it. And what will happen if you get this paper wet enough, it will actually start to what I call pill, and little fibers will start to come up. It'll get rough, it'll change the texture and actually start pulling it up. And it also pulls up the tea dye that I soaked and baked onto these if you get it wet enough. However, if you take it and dab some water onto your page first and use this just around the outskirts of that, you can actually use this to pull the water into it, and it doesn't really pill as bad. Of course it's going to on this one. And you can get some movement with the watercolor if you use quite a bit of water, and then you go right into the middle of it, you get almost nothing. As you bring it out to the side and get it, grab some dry paper there and kind of mix it in, you can once again see how this is faded a bit. The little blobs you see are tiny little fibers coming off the paper, but I still think it's a really cool effect. So once again, this brush is leaving a very weak color because I've gotten it wet. They actually include a pen with the brush pen set that you can put water in to pull it, but I have found that I'm not qualified to use this equipment yet. I've found that it's easier to use various small watercolor brushes and just dip them in. When I use this, I end up getting too much water on most of what I'm doing. Most of what I'm doing are very small jobs, and I just don't have the touch for it yet. But I am looking forward to using these water blending brushes more. So you can see the effect there. And I'm actually in the middle of a swap with my friend Vicky, and I'm going to be doing quite a few purple index cards and probably stitching some images over them. So I've just got some water here, and I want the edge of this, I left the edge of this dry, I want the edge of this to be quite purple. This is that eggplant purple. You can see how thick it goes on. I'm going to go right up the edge there. And then I'm going to go into the water and pull it over. And the reason I went up the edge first, it's really hard to pull this out to the edge after you've already diluted it with the water. But once you've got it going there and you've already got some over at the edge, the effect is nice. You can see how heavy, and it looks pretty rough when it first goes on, but let me show you what happens when it dries. So as you can see, you end up with looking like you colored with a magic marker on the edge. You can actually bring it out and have it various shades, and here this is just that pure watercolor melting effect, which is more what I tried to go for on most of these. I wanted to show you the edge. This is how the edges dried on the cards that I'm going to be putting more of the texts on. I wanted it on the edge so that it would show. When I did the earlier ones, the earlier versions of these, I did the darker portions and pulled it out, and there was hardly any blue or red showing at the edge. because the text was covering the pretty blend. But, you know, on these, it's just nice and loud and it pops that way. And they're all for collage purposes anyways, so if you've got some parts that you don't like so much, you know, a lot of it will be covered, and it's just that background effect. It's really quite wonderful. I used some tea-dyed office tags, little office tags, and one by one I just watercolored on each side, and I let them dry, and then I stamped them. If you want something really light, just a really light effect, it's my ceramic owl dish. You can take the blue so it'll show up well. I'm just going to take this blue and just paint right there, right into a divot, and take my pen. I'm going to blot my brush. I'm going to blot some of that water off and just use this as a palette, and I can just paint very lightly right onto the paper. And this is what I did for the little tags. You can see how that just blends in, and as it dries it'll have darker edges and lighter highlights. So that's a real neat effect too. So this is the way I've begun incorporating these watercolors into junk journals. I'm going to spend my evening painting tea-dyed index cards and Mod Podging and collaging over them. So I hope you found this informative. I am really enjoying these brush pens. Arteza did a wonderful job with these. Gosh, so many possibilities. There are fabulous videos on YouTube showing so many different variations of art with these. I will put links for these below. They are affiliate links at no cost to you. I will get credit if you end up buying some through those links, but I encourage you to check out Arteza and look at their various products. Really versatile, and I'm quite happy with them, and I sure appreciate the opportunity to get some of these and try them out, and I look forward to using some more of these in future junk journal tutorials and such. I have a number of videos over the next couple days, and we'll be back with you guys. Have a really good day. Thanks for popping in. Bye-bye.